Good morning. Today we look at Psalm 29 and Psalm 30. Just as a heads up, tomorrow morning I'm going to be on early, probably around 7:30 or so, but it'll be available at any point in time for the next 30 days. As I set these to remain posted for 30 days and then they disappear. So that might. Anyway, today Psalm 29 is a Psalm of David again, and as I read it, earlier this morning in one translation, it begins with, "Give to the Lord, O heavenly beings." Give to the Lord glory and strength. Give to the Lord the glory of his name. This New Revised Standard uses the word ascribe to the Lord, O heavenly beings. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe the glory of his name and worship the Lord. And ascribe means to attribute to or to pay honor to, and it's just like this Psalm 29 is ascribed to King David. It's attributed to King David as having written it, as having been the author, as the originator of it, and so the word ascribe to the Lord, you attribute to the Lord, your heavenly beings, his glory and his strength. Ascribe it to him. We give God glory. But we don't give God his strength. We ascribe, we pay attention to, we attribute God's strength and glory to God and his abilities that way, and to worship him. And then verse 3 says, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters, the God of glory thunders." And tie that together with verse 7, "The voice of the Lord flashes forth like flames of fire." You're talking about a thunderstorm. And thunder and lightning can really be fun to watch, and it can also be very intimidating. When a bolt of lightning hit the top of our business band antenna a few years ago, it was so bright and the boom was instantaneous and so loud. But yet if you see a lightning strike, that's 5-10 miles away. You can see the glory and the majesty of it a little bit more, and then a few seconds later you hear the rumble of thunder. And sometimes that rumble of thunder from a distant storm or a distant lightning strike is a little bit more muted, a little bit more muffled, and doesn't quite get your attention. But that close lightning bolt, that gets your attention, the loud noise of the thunder. And I remember, growing up and hearing the jets breaking the sound barrier and the boom that would go, and you'd hear that boom and it would rumble across the sky. So David is attributing to God the power of the thunderstorm. He doesn't cause storms in our lives, but throughout all of the storms in our life, God is there. And verse 10 says, "The Lord sits enthroned over the flood. He sits enthroned as king forever." So he is over and above the storms. And it's a reminder to us that when the storms are in our lives, when we have those powerful things that seem to want to stop us in our tracks, to remember that God is up above and over the storm, that God has more abilities than the storm, that the God is a God of peace. And so here David attributes the lightning and the thunder, the voice of the thunder, to God. And yet we remember that when Elijah was there, and God wasn't in the storm, God wasn't in that, but God was in the sound of sheer silence. It doesn't mean he isn't there in the storms, and he isn't around in all those times, but sometimes we need to just sit in the silence to really experience and to know God that way. It says he makes Lebanon skip like a calf and Sirion like a young wild ox. Well, Lebanon, this was a mountain range. A mountain range skipping like a calf, and Sirion is, another name for King Hermon. And so the mountain range and this biggest mountain around, dance around like calves and like a young wild ox. They're just, and we know that mountains can't move by themselves, but yet David says, that this is the power that God has. And so when we have this heavy weight laying upon us, that we don't know how to handle, we know that God can lift it from us. And and that God is the God of peace, and that God is there for all of us. I read a deal that a father and his daughter were driving along the road, and the daughter was driving, and they run into a storm, and it's starting to rain hard, and the wind is blowing, and it's nasty driving, and some vehicles are pulling over to the side of the road and stopping, and she asks her father, "Should I pull over and stop?" And he says, "No, keep driving." And she continues to see cars pulling over and stopping. She says, "Should I pull over and stop?" "No, keep driving." And this happens, several times, and the father continually says, "Keep driving." And down the road, they drive out of the storm. And when they get to the place where there is no more storm, no more rain, no more winds, and none of that going on, then the father says, "Now stop." So she pulls over and she stops, and she said, "But why stop now?" And the father says, "Turn around and look back. Look at the storm and realize how many people are still stuck in the storm, and we have moved through the storm and are out of the storm." And it's a reminder to us that it just, kind of like this psalm, that, we can't get caught. We can't get stuck in the storm. I mean, there are times when we're driving, and I've done it myself. I mean, you're driving and it's so raining so hard the wipers can't keep it off and you can't see. And you almost have to stop. You slow way down, but don't get stuck there. Don't get stuck there. And this is the message, that there are going to be storms in our lives, but don't get stuck there. Remember that God is with us, God is leading us, that God has more power than the storms. And so give God the strength of his people, and may the Lord bless his people with peace. And so it's just that reminder that in the storms of our lives, we need to rely more on God, and that God will give us that peace and that strength. Psalm 30 is a psalm, again, of David, that he talks about when he was sick, when he was really ill, when he was afraid he was going to die. And it kind of echoes back to Psalm 18 as well, part of it. But, he says, "You have drawn me up, and you did not let my foe rejoice over me. I cried to you for help, and you have healed me." So it starts out as a hymn of praise, that, in my distress, in my illness, I cried out, and you healed me. You were there for me, God. You have brought my soul up out of Sheol, the pit. You have restored my life, and when I was so sick I didn't know if I was going to make it, I leaned on you, I counted on you, and you gave me healing. And then verse 5, his anger is but a moment, his favor for a lifetime. Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes in the morning. And, the Old Testament credo kind of is, that God is slow to anger and filled with abounding love and steadfast grace and mercy, something like that. And the Lord's anger is fleeting, but for a moment. And, as we read through the histories of the Israelites, we found so often that God was angry with his people because of their sin. And he said, "I'm not going to pay any attention to you anymore. Just, I'm going to let you be destroyed." When they were wandering in the wilderness after he had freed them from slavery and from Egypt, he was going to give up on them. He just, and Moses pleaded for him. And so his anger is but a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. And, God never gives up on us. This is the promise. He never gives up on us. His favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may linger for the night, but joy comes with the morning. And again, it's kind of like, getting stuck in the storm. And as I just mentioned, we can just go on living in the past and wishing things were different, and remembering the good old days and how much better it was and all of that. But yet we need to move forward and go on. And, this joy comes with the morning is spelled morning as in daybreak. But I also I think about that you could spell that M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G as well, that, you know, not that joy comes in the morning, but when we mourn, when we're moved deeply that way by something that's happened to us, we find our ways through the situation, and we don't always end up with joy at what happened, but we know the joy of that God is with us, and that, you know, and it's just difficult in so many ways, but we need to move on. And this is what David is saying. You know, he said, I was sick, I was sick, I was afraid I was going to die, and I appealed to you, Lord. In verse 8, to you, O Lord, I cried, and I, Lord, made supplication. You know, he said, what profit is it if I die? What, you know, and all this, you know, I mean, I want to live. I need to live. And you know, oh Lord, be my helper. And then verse 11, you have turned my mourning, and this is the M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, the depth of sorrow. You have turned that depths of sorrow into dancing, into joy. You've taken off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy. And it ends with that positive, oh Lord, I will give you thanks forever. And we don't thank God for, you know, things that hurt us. We don't thank God for the bad things that happen in life, but we thank God that in and through all things, that we have His promise of love, of grace, of forgiveness, the promise of eternal life, the promise that, you know, no matter what, we are His forever.